Beautiful. We are rocking and rolling. All right, so today, this is the third or fourth week now. Fourth week of breaking down a psychological process that every human, every man, every woman goes through called the individuation process, how to become the best version of ourselves. Not getting caught up with external telling us what to be or who to be, but beginning to live from internal out so that we can impact the outside world instead of let the outside world impact us in a negative way. TK's done a hell of a job putting this slideshow together. And here in this one, you're going to learn about the encounter with the self. We're going to break down just a brief overview of the past ones, and then we're going to dive deep into a real growth process of the individuation of becoming your best self. And just like, I don't know if it was Dumbledore or Hagrid that's telling Harry, but you're a wizard, Harry. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys truly are magicians in this world, and you are directors of the play. You're not just an actor in the play. You're an actor / director. You get to run the show as well as be in the show. Oh, one sec. Sorry, guys. Bang, okay.
Cool. So this is what the idea is that we've been covering the past couple of weeks here. First, you have this individual who's fully unconscious of the world in which they actually live, right? The metaphor that I've been using for this is you are a ship on the ocean and you have this great unconscious that lives beneath you. And so what happens when you're younger, and just even as you're older, this can happen consistently, is that ship starts to break down and get pulled down into the unconscious. And so you have somebody who's an original wholeness, and also that's known as inflation, but your ego is within that unconscious, that great ocean of things. And then what happens to break you out of unconscious is you get rejected by the world. So you've had these ideas, they were great ideas of who you were as an individual, and you had something, this ultimate vision of who you were, but then reality came along and showed you that you weren't actually that thing. And so you get hurt by it.
The world's supposed to look like this. Oh shit, it doesn't look like I thought. This doesn't feel very good.
Her mom told me.
Yeah.
And so somebody gets attached to, even as a child, they get attached to ideas. My mother treated me really great, but then they actually go out and see that the world doesn't treat them great. And so they get alienated in some type of way. That's when you're younger, but other things can happen, like relationships ending, money situations, things that maybe it feels like the world's ending with things the way society's going. So you feel alienated from the greater self within and a lot of this God image, right? And then what it gets you to do eventually, which is where we're going to spend a little bit of time today, is you get to that spot of humility and repentance, because you came from this state where you thought you were something great. The real world came along, rejected you, and now you feel hurt. You're wounded. A couple other synonyms with that is depression, despair. So these things that really feel like they hurt. And then you now start to reassemble yourself as an individual, and then you accept the way things are, and you start to reconnect with the greater self within. And that is what we're going to start diving into today, but there are some steps that you have to realize going through that process. So this goes along with the idea of the ocean, right? The self is that great ocean, and the ego is living within it. It's the same thing that T was just saying with the actor on stage. You're this actor on stage, but ultimately the one that is directing the show is the self, the whole unconscious. And then the ego starts to realize, oh, he's directing the show. And then now he starts to rise up on stage because he starts to realize he has power in life as an individual. But sometimes he takes on and feels he has all this power when it's actually the great unconscious that's behind him. And so that's usually when he has this great fall happen. When we talked about the Garden of Eden, it feels like paradise when you start to get caught in with the self, and it feels like you have these kingly like powers, and then you start to realize they're not your powers in a sense. The unconscious starts to pull you back, and then some bad shit happens, and then the ego starts to separate from the self, and it almost feels separated, and that's that alienation state that we've covered.
It's like, I don't like how the director's directing the movie. Well, fuck him. I want to start acting my own way. I want to start doing my own thing. I want to start being that own actor. So all of a sudden, like he's saying, you start separating from the director instead of working with the director to move the show in your direction. If that makes sense. It's good to understand that we need to be separated, but we need to continuously go back and forth from separation of I'm the actor to let's work with the director at the same time.
Perfect. So today we are going into the role of the collective. It's very important. The note I threw in here is to encounter the self, the great unconscious. We must also understand how the collective functions and influences it possesses over the ego.
What is the collective?
So the collective would be society. Yeah, that's another word that you can throw in with it. What is society telling the ego to start to think within its life? And also you have all these collective ideas and visions that people are feeling across the world, and they start to influence the way your ego starts to think.
So for example, you have even today, all the worry about race right now. If you're a part of a certain color skin or part of a certain religion, or part of a certain creed, all of a sudden that collective groupthink of that group is going to begin to influence your internal thoughts as you continue to go along. So I'm either going to become a part of what everybody else is thinking, whether that's good or bad. So now you have to be able to understand, is this a good thing? Is this really true? And the only way to learn this is to unlearn everything we've already learned. I believe it's Bruce Lee. Somebody come up to him and was like, hey, can I learn from you? He's like, no, I can't teach you anything. The guy's like, what the fuck? What do you mean you can't teach me anything? I want to learn something from you. I'm trying to learn. He's like, no, I can't teach you anything because you already know too much of what you know. It's like the only way I can teach you something is if you unlearn everything you know, clear those mental bookshelves, and allow for new books to be put into your library. Then I can teach you something. So being aware that we have to literally unlearn everything we've learned from growing up to not let the external world influence us internally, but to live from us out, to create what we decide is truth, is real, is not. Because in today's day and age, we live in a day and age where you can get access to any information you want. You can get both sides of the story on any story. You're going to get viewpoints, opinions. Well, this is how it should be. Well, this is how it should be from different groups. So it's not knowledge is power anymore, because there's so much fucking knowledge in today's day and age and the technological advancements that you can have access to any of it. The real winners of this society are going to be the people who can bring discernment. They're going to be the sifters. They're going to be sorting through the knowledge and picking out the gold pieces of each one and collectively getting that to the truth. It's like when you make gold or you distill water, you are diluting and you heat it up so fucking hot that all the fake stuff has to melt off. All the impurities disappear. But growing up, we were built up with these impurities, whether it be our parents' way of thinking, because maybe their parents were grown up some way, or a religious person, or somebody that we looked up to growing up, and they had a certain viewpoint, so that's what we wanted to be, because we put them up on a pedestal growing up. And then it's like when you're a kid, you're like, man, all these adults know what the fuck they're talking about. Then you get to 20, 25, and you're like, oh, fuck, nobody knows what's going on here. It's like, this is what is going on. This is a show. It's like, I thought people were supposed to have it figured out. As a kid, like, yeah, they got a job, they got their own house, they got a car, they even got a family. Then you go in and they're fucking scrambling every day trying to figure out, how do I get this show to act like I want to act? And rule number one, you separated from the director. You got to understand, you're the director, you're the actor and director. But if you run from the director, it's going to start directing things in a shitty way. And you're, fuck, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, how come? And now, again, you get alienated, depressed. Well, life isn't what I thought it was. And so you can either get stuck there, and we'll talk about that in just a second, or branch out and work with the powers working with us. But again, be willing to unlearn everything to relearn new.
I think that unlearning process too is just so necessary, but it's so hard because it's like, it's sad. It's hard to look at that part and be like, I've been lied to my whole time. And it's like so many people don't want to do that, so they just keep going on with thinking, oh, I don't know what I don't know, or I've been taught this way the whole time, instead of like, going questioning these things and finding out it for yourself. But I mean, it's tough though, and that's why I feel like a lot of people don't unlearn it, because they don't want to go through that, the shadow side and the darkness of that, because it's a lot of darkness going through that.
They don't want to face the what if I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Will you explain your viewpoint growing up about police officers and what's changed?
Oh yeah, so just like growing up, I just what we see on the news and the encounters that I have personally, it's just basically, yeah, it's police were the bad guys. Like they were not to be trusted. Like every time you see a police, you want to go away. It's they weren't so because I mean, police officers are supposed to protect us. We're supposed to have faith in them and that they regard mankind. But it's just like everything I seen, the opposite was the opposite. It's like no racism or equality or different things like that, or police don't trust the police. And then now, obviously, I know police officers and stuff, and I have a completely different understanding on police officers now because they're people just like us. There's good people and bad people. So I feel like I had to unlearn that, though, and that was a tough process too because it's like even family members, parents and stuff taught me these things as well. So it's like to be aware, but it was an unlearning process I had to go through. And I think everybody has to go through that. And like I said, that's just one specific element. Just with health too, I had to unlearn so many things with health. So it all comes down to the same thing. So.
And like he said, there's good and bad in all things. So it's recognizing what is good and what is evil. I tell people all the time, I don't look at people as people anymore. I fucking take their skin off, take their muscles off. I'm looking just at the nervous system, a brain and it looks like an alien web, honestly. They're fucking walking around, they're just floating. And it's like, what is this person? Are they good? Are they bad? What is their spirit? What is their soul? And it doesn't matter the category or the bucket that we put in there. It's who are these people as individuals?
Yeah, so all that feeds into this idea. So we have seen that the states of inflation and alienation, both being parts of the psychic life cycle, that same cycle that we've been going through, that's a cycle that you'll continue to go through your whole life. Because you've gone through it with health, you've also gone through it with the police side of things. But so you're continuing to wake up in several of these different areas, but ultimately what we're talking about is becoming more conscious. And that same idea of becoming more of an individual, that means you're becoming more conscious of the life that you're living. And so the only constant in the world is change, but how many of us fear change? And so we have to be very aware that things are always going to be changing, rather than I'm going to be okay when this happens or when that happens. In the movie Fight Club, he gets his apartment blown up, and it's this dude who's all focused on consumerism and getting all of these different, he's like, I'm so close to getting my wardrobe correct and my furniture and everything.
I almost had the fucking couch. I had everything but the couch, and it would have been there.
Right. So anyway, the whole movie's like focused on IKEA at the beginning. He's buying all these great things, right? And then his fucking apartment gets blown up. But it is symbolic. That is what people go through. It has these ideas that they're very attached to. It's consumerism in his instance, where he buys all these things to really fill the void in his life. But then he gets alienated because he just got his whole fucking apartment blown up, and that was his world, right? It leads to a fall and hence to alienation. So he feels separated. And in his instance, he actually has somebody physically get projected into his world to start to save him. But the alienated condition, likewise, under normal circumstances, leads over to the state of healing and restitution. So you have something bad happen in the life, once again, like we've been talking about, and then you start to have something happen. Once you've gone through all this hard shit, we were talking about last time, it's like you're in the desert. And it feels like life is like, what should I do? Life has no meaning, it has no purpose. And a lot of people have this feeling throughout the world, they just don't want to acknowledge it, be truthful about it. And so, because we've been told 9 to 5, that's the fucking dream, It's like, it's the dream. Yeah. And we go through that process, and then we start to realize this isn't the dream. I don't feel good about life. It doesn't feel like it has any meaning or purpose. And so people want real things, and that's what the whole movie Fight Club is actually devoted to. It's like we're all feeling all the way down here, this very nihilistic feeling. But it's like sometimes we just need to let the fuck go. And that's why this idea, Tyler Durden, comes into play. And he's the one that starts to get people to realize that they've been searching for this spiritual meaning and purpose. And so he comes on, and he's the one that delivers that healing and restitution. But inflation or alienation becomes dangerous conditions only if they are separated from the life cycle. So once again, if you don't even know this life cycle exists, you can get stuck in one of those things. So you become alienated, you stay depressed. And then maybe now because you're depressed, you're like, I don't feel right about life. And nobody wants to fucking admit that life is partly meaningless in a sense.
The last girlfriend cheated on me, so I'm never going to date another fucking girl again because they all cheat.
Matter of fact, the rest of the world fucking sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like it gets you to look at everything, right? And then so you start to get all these feelings, this hate built up, and then they're like, okay, here's a drug for you to feel better. And so you think life is just this depression. And since nobody wants to admit these things, you start to seek to distract yourself from that feeling in different ways, whether it's I want to work so I can eventually get my wardrobe complete. I want to get, when I get this, that's when my life will be complete, right? It's always this next cycle of I'm searching for the next thing. But if you don't realize this cycle exists, you're supposed to go from being alienated into encountering the greater self within. I don't know that exists, and I'm not searching for anything. And so you just stay in one spot, you're stagnant. And it either becomes a state of chronic state, or it becomes a static, chronic state of being, rather than a part of the comprehensive dynamism. The personality is threatened. Same point that I'm getting at. You get stuck in one phase, it's not going to lead to good things.
Ever.
So.
The caterpillar, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. So if you get stuck in one phase, it consumes you. And if you if you decide to continue the growth process, it's going to develop you. So imagine in real life, we have the caterpillar. If it were to get stuck in the fucking cocoon, it's gonna be in its own prison its whole rest of its life. That's what we do to ourselves our whole time. We're growing. Boom, bad shit happens. I'm gonna get trapped in my own cocoon. Fuck, I'm scared of change, so I don't want to break out of here. I'm nervous. What if something bad happens? I don't want to break out of here. And all of a sudden, you're in your own fucking prison the rest of your life. What cocoons do we trap ourselves in our own lives? Is it relationship cocoons? Or are we afraid of dying cocoons? Is it, oh, fuck, what if I don't have the money to do it cocoons? Fear, well, what is somebody going to think of me? So I never take the action. Fear of being too late. Well, they had it. They could have got it, but they jumped on it right when it happened. The opportunity was there for them, but maybe not for me. Is it we aren't good enough, or fear of getting sick? COVID right there. Fuck, I can't go out in the world. Oh, baby, I'm trapped in the cocoon. I can't fucking grow. Look at this. This is the same process that you guys just saw up above in nature. We're all going to start as an egg. So, and this continues to go. Rebirth. In most religious texts, you're going to hear born again, the phoenix. It dies into the ashes, boom, and the egg comes right back. So you have the egg, and then you have the caterpillar. You're growing, you're like, man, life's great. I'm eating hungry caterpillar. I'm eating all this food. Things are great. I love the world. And then hard shit happens, and you get in the cocoon. This is an uncomfortable process, and it's even more uncomfortable to break out of it. But as soon as you break out of it, like, oh, fuck. I'm in such a better place. It's crazy, but most people are too scared to give up the good to be willing to go to great. They're too scared to give up the good for the great. And then all of a sudden, the next cycle comes. Just like Denby said, it went from health. He had to relearn everything. And then boom, now he's there. Now it's the next thing. It's like, I'm going to go back because it's a hot topic right now, racism. If Denby grew up and his whole family said all whites are bad, and I grew up and my family said all blacks are bad, and then we meet each other, we're either going to hate each other or we're going to be able to realize, like, oh shit, he's a human too. He's a human too. He's great too. He's great too. We got different qualities, but we're of the same fucking blood. We're the same DNA. We're humans. We should love each other. So you have to unlearn everything you knew in this uncomfortable process and face it. Fuck, maybe I was wrong. Most people are not willing to accept I was wrong because they put so much energy into identifying this is me. This is my belief system, and I'm right. This humble pie tastes shitty, guys, every fucking time. But it's the most nutrient-dense food you're ever gonna get. And we all need to go through it every single time. So this never, ever stops. Go ahead, 2K.
The point I was going to add here, too, is the reason we're talking about this specific idea is the thing that keeps you in the cocoon is these societal standards that get pushed onto you, because they're the ones who plant the seeds and the ideas that keep you in this prison, right? And so the thing that allows you to break out of that prison is studying things like history, and studying things like psychology, because you start to see that there's different ideas, there's different morals than we've been taught in this age. And so if somebody has lack of history, they don't know what was good 15 years ago or 20 years ago or 200 years ago. Roman times are totally different than the times they are now. But if you don't have that context of history of what was good and evil, you can't see how much they've started to shift the narrative into certain directions. And you have to think, we're just talking about the racism one. What if there's 25 different beliefs that they're keeping you in? And then that, just like right there alone, if I think I'm going to go out and hang out with my friends, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to get sick. Just think about what that does. And then now they don't hang out with a friend when the friend could have had a great conversation. So all the things that don't happen, and they don't happen unconsciously because of the beliefs that you hold in this area. And then you can never actually start to become a butterfly.
Truly. Yep, 100%. And now imagine how important it is if, like he said, it comes from the societal standards, the family standards that we got brought up in. It comes from the story we were told our whole life. Now, who controls the story? That's the question to ask, because if you can control the story, you can control what people think right out of the gate from a young age. You can develop, you can track them, you can guide them. If you have bad intentions, next thing you know, that's when bad things happen throughout history, right? A lot of bad shit can happen. So, and movies will even go through this, like TK was talking. Movies have changed a ton, but if they'll show people getting trapped in a cocoon, the hero, he's growing, everything's great, boom, some bad shit happens. It's uncomfortable as fuck. They hate it, and then pop, they pop out to the butterfly, and they'll become the obstacle.
I was gonna say, like, just to paint. Has anybody seen Braveheart here? Yeah. So Braveheart, he's coming along. He's actually badass. He got to get grown up with his uncle, I believe it was. He's the caterpillar, and then they're accepting the idea of the English ruling all of the Scottish people, right? But then his wife dies, and so that starts to break him out of this prison because, like, oh shit, now I actually have to do something about it. So they have something catastrophic that happens in their story as they're going through these things. And then now they have to merge from boyhood to manhood, in a sense, or from girlhood into womanhood. And so you have to see that they have some hard shit to come along, like really hard shit. I mean, your wife dying, that's not too easy to deal with. And then now he's like, let's go to war. I want freedom. So it's usually out of pain and suffering that somebody will stand up for freedom. So the mass of men have always been protected from these dangers because we've been talking about, see people get stuck in these psychic cycles rather than moving forward. The mass of men have always been protected from these dangers by collective, conventional, and therefore largely unconscious means. So meaning church, religion, folk wisdom, myths, all these ideas used to guide somebody from the one spot to the next spot. Because they'd be like, oh, Hercules came out, right? He came out on top. Or Braveheart, right? What's his name?
I don't know his name.
William something.
Yeah, I don't know his name.
Braveheart. He comes out on top though, right? And so you have these folk wisdom, these ideas and these myths that start to get people to go from one spot to another. But what starts to happen here is they get somebody to realize, oh, I'm in this state, now I can go from one to the next. And so that's the beauty of all these myths. And so they go unstudied, but there are many collective and personal rituals which exist for the purpose of avoiding any inflated tendency. You go back. So rather than staying the caterpillar or going back to being a caterpillar, I mean, the idea we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks is the emperor baby, all those things with being narcissistic, grandiose, basically not stepping into realizing the world is full of pain. Rather than going back into comfort, being humble is the thing that continues to get you to see your personality as it actually is versus the way you think it is. So
I think that's one of the most important things, for sure.
So which part?
What you just said.
Yeah, seeing it as it is.
Yeah, because there's this term that I read in one of my readings recently. It says that humility isn't thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
So it's like we got to get out of our own way, and realize that the butterfly wings are within us already.
Yes.
And you just got to be. You ain't got to do anything but be.
True.
And it's like, because when you're being, everything's gonna flow. You know what I mean? And everything that you do is gonna be intentional. And nature puts you in that cocoon. You know what I mean? So it's like if nature's putting you in that cocoon, at some point you're gonna have to get out of it. But it's kind of like we're going against nature, just nature in a way, by keeping ourselves in that cocoon.
Yes.
So,
and that's why it becomes prison. That's why you get depressed. That's why you feel despair. Because it's like when you're a kid going through elementary, junior high, you're hanging out with the kids that do what you do. That's why the cliques and the groups get started. Well, they drink and smoke. I can't hang out with them because they're different. Oh, I got raised in this religion. I can't hang out with them because they think different. Now we start getting above. We start trapping ourselves in the cocoon, and you're exactly right. You go against nature. And as soon as you go against nature, shit gets hard. You're the fish swimming upstream. It's like, fuck, oh, it's like, fuck, I can't go there. It just keeps hitting me. What the fuck? Instead of moving with nature. Fuck, this is going to be a wild experience, but let's go through it. Boom. And we give up the good for the great.
100%. And in order to do that, you have to in order to unforget everything you've learned, you have to get out of your own way, and that's truly what it is, you know what I mean? Because I think dropping the beliefs are easy, right? They're just, it's a decision. Boom, I drop that belief. I open my mind, boom, right? But it's the reason why it's so hard is because you're in your own way.
Yeah. And you invested so many hours into developing you. When you wake up in the morning and you walk past the mirror, you're like, that's me. What video, what person, what imagination is that person? And change is uncomfortable. Just like going to the gym at the beginning is uncomfortable as fuck. Nobody wants to do this. But as soon as you do it, you're like, oh man, I feel fucking good. But it's like before, you're like, there's 30 reasons why I shouldn't go today. But as soon as you can conquer that, you go in the cocoon, go into the fucking growth. Boom, you grow, you're like, I feel so much better.
Yeah, working out is such a perfect example of how life should be taken on, right? Because rather than working out, you want to be at home in a snuggie next to the fire, right? But you want to seek comfort, but it's that with all ideas. It's, do you want to seek comfort or seek truth? And every time you seek truth, it is painful. And so this is the image that you should instill in your head of where you want to be when it comes to these ideas that start to get instilled into your head from whether it's society or just these beliefs that you built up about yourself. These are all gods he's surrounded by. You have Zeus up top. You also have the idea of Medusa here trying to take control of him, but he's shielded up. He's got the sword. He's got the shield, and so he's slaying all these things, standing strong. He's got also some really cool looking armor. But that's where you want to be with all these ideas. These ideas and beliefs are trying to bring you down and make you abide by these beliefs that you set within your life. And whether it's society that sets your beliefs or yourself, you need to actually start to take those things apart and see where did they come from. And so getting this image instilled in your head of this is where you want to be.
DMX, guys, one of my favorite songs from DMX, Lord, give me a sign. He's going through all this turmoil. He's going through all this stuff. He says, keep it real with us now. I want to feel, show me how. And he says, he's talking to God here. He says, let me take your hand and guide me. He says, I'll walk slow, but stay right beside me. And then he says, please help me. Shit's going bad. The devil's trying to find me. Please help me. And then he's like, please, the devil's trying to find me. Please hide me, God. He's like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I hiding from the fear? Why am I running from the fear? He says, I take that back. Protect me and give me the strength to fight back. Lord, give me a sign. And it's being able to realize we get put in our own box. And that shit is scary. It's like, why would I want to hide in my own? Give me a safe corner, please. No, fuck a safe corner. It's better that you live 30 years of adventure than 100 years safe in the corner, according to Jim Rohn. That's damn straight on the money. So be willing to give yourself the strength to fight back, but you have to go through, just like the gym, if you want to get bigger, you want to get leaner, you got to go through the uncomfortable process. You got to put stress on the muscle, stress on the mind, stress on the spirit to be able to get strong enough to have your fucking badass shield, stand up straight, my head up tall, look at people in the fucking eyeballs when I talk to them. Now I have the shield, the sword, and the armor. Now nothing can fucking stop me. I'm ready to rock. Any obstacle can go out, bang, bump, bounce off. Slices this obstacle's fucking head off. Fucking teeth kicks the next guy, like whatever we gotta do.
This is Sparta.
Exactly.
So some of the examples that put in place to keep somebody humble, right? So we have all these things that we talk about in society that keep us humble, but we don't know what we're actually doing. There's things we say. So knocking on wood, right? You have all these great things coming down your path. And it's something somebody says when things are going well, but behind it is the unconscious or conscious realization that pride and complacency are dangerous. So you don't want to get into a spot where you become complacent. You always want to be growing and continuing to go on that path, but there is a part of you unconsciously that knows, are you getting inflated in a sense? Are you starting to think things are going too well? And so then you just say, fuck it, things are going to go great. And then the use of the phrase, God willing. God willing, this happens. But used to say what one hopes and expects to do or happen if no problems occur. Could this also be an excuse to allow yourself to not give your best? I think you had that.
Yeah. When I watch this guy, is like, he was in a poor country. He has all the ability anybody else does. If you're a fucking human, you got the ability. If some human can do it, if they breathe the same air as you, bleed the same blood as you, one, you should not fear them. Two, you have the same ability as them. So if somebody can be a billionaire, on the Forbes list, just the Forbes, this is documented. There's over 2,000 billionaires. If 2,000 fucking people can do it, you damn well can do it. But it's like, well, God willing, I'll be a billionaire. So I'm just gonna keep on doing. I'm gonna keep on watching TV for 40 hours a week. Keep on fucking social media 80 hours a week. Keep on doing the same routine. God willing, it'll happen. Like a miracle's gonna be thrust upon you. No, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so you earn your own miracles. We shower ourselves with our own blessings, guys. But you have to be able to understand that, or we're a creature of circumstance instead of a creator of circumstance. But like he said, do not get complacent. And TK says this all the time. Stay dangerous. Fucking stay dangerous. Because as soon as you're like, I'm safe in the corner, you're trapped in the fucking box. You think you're safe, but you literally caged yourself just like a bird. And you're like, man, you put yourself in the cage. Whoo, I'm protected in here. Look at all these birds flying out there. They're the fucking dummies. And then you have the birds that are flying that, man, I am free. I am living.
Maybe if you believe that you were a shark, you'd be in that cage, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like, the sharks won't eat you if you believe in it.
Yes.
So it's like,
Yep.
You don't need that.
Yep. Eagles soar with eagles.
Yeah.
Eagles soar with eagles. Oh, sorry, I skipped the Christian tradition.
Yeah, and so all these ideas are trying to get you to the point so that you continually monitor yourself and make sure that you stay humble. It's a very important thing. And it doesn't even have to be on the outside, right? You can still put yourself out there as you're the man, you get all this shit done. But internally, you have to be very truthful with yourself. And it's that same point that he says, the very good point you make. It's you have to bring yourself to terms with the real reality and the reality that you set in your head. Because you may think you're this great thing, where you try to paint that image, but there's also these other feelings, negative things. It's like, I'm not that great. But you have these images of who you think you are versus who you really are, and you want to continually try to get the internal world to match what is the real world. And so Christian tradition, great efforts are to protect against the inflated state, the 7 deadly sins. So always keeping check on pride, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, I don't know how you say that word, avarice, and sloth, but especially envy. Think about how much envy has taken over our world, all that same consumer culture that I was talking about earlier. Fight clubs to try and take that away, because he says in the movie, it's like, you're not how much money you make, you're not the car you drive, you're not the clothes you wear. And none of those things fucking matter. Who are you at the end of the day once you separate yourself from all those things? That's who you really are. And who are you once you separate yourself from your family, from your church? What's actually there? Just because if I say I'm a supporter of LGBT, that doesn't mean it gives me a personality. Because I say I support BLM, that doesn't give me a personality. Who are you once you separate yourself from the groups that you decide to be associated with? By being labeled sins within Christianity, which require confession and penance, the individual is protected against them. And so all these things are always being monitored within the Christian myth. And so they get somebody to be humble on the inside, and by being humble on the inside, continually monitor themselves so they don't get inflated once again. They're always trying to bring that real world, that internal world, to be associated with what's actually happening in this world. And so you piece those things together and you become more of a true man. True man. Oh yeah. This is Kendrick Lamar. Be humble, right? And I just want to throw out some lyrics, because this is what you should be saying to yourself. Bitch, be humble. Sit down. But you have this little s self that's always trying to take control and say, I'm the man. I'm the one who gets shit done. I'm the one who's, it's the very narcissistic personality within you, and it's always trying to take control of things. I'm the king. People should like be, applauding me as I walk in, and you're like going to a fucking store. But the point is, you always want to be humble on the inside. And so associating these songs and these ideas and these images with how your internal world should be, that's a very important thing.
And like he said, being able to start matching your internal with the external. There's a point of that image that you have to create so that you are forced to want to become it. It's like if a young bodybuilder, they throw a picture of fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger on the wall. That is the image of a body that they want to become like. So it motivates them to go to the gym and put the work in. And at some point though, it It is an amazing tool, and you need that to, I'm the fucking man, I do get shit done. You need that, but in order to be able to create the reality, the internal has to be battled with the, I'm not good enough. What if this isn't working? What if so-and-so's opinion matters more than mine? You have to conquer all these fucking demons to be able to start closing the distance to the image. It's the same with the goals. You can set a goal, and as soon as the goal is set, now you have a pathway. The only problem is closing the distance from the now to that goal. So if we can continue to create the image we want to be, but not get caught up in ourselves, getting caught up in the true image, not the I'm the man, so everybody needs to fucking bend the knee to me. It's like, no, I'm the man because I'm the man, but I'm also going to serve this person because I know if I had to conquer these battles, they probably have to conquer some too. And instead of judging them, be like, fuck these guys, I conquered mine, you didn't fucking conquer yours. It's like, hey, how can I assist you? Giving them a hand up instead of a hand out. We're not fucking trying to give for everybody that is just taking shit and taking shit and taking shit, and they're fucking sucking you dry. You're giving to the people who are battling the same battle as you're battling.
You got a truckload of fishing poles, not a truckload of fish.
Yes, truly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. And so there is the shadow side of having these ideas, these myths, these traditions to know what will come next in the process for you. So there is a shadow side to that because it starts to deprive someone of the individual experience that they're going through. And so that somebody becomes the church rather than becoming an individual. And so the point to make here, as long as a living religion can contain the self and mediate the dynamism for its members, there will be little need for the individual to have a personal encounter with the self. So it's the same idea as people going to church and then their church experience is simply what the pastor says. It's not really what they're starting to experience internally. They think that God is only through the church, that they don't have this individual experience. And so it starts to get people to not focus on their individual relation to the transpersonal dimension. And so the task will be done for him by the church. So they transfer the responsibility of putting through all this growth and everything and going on this path to learning more, getting closer to their greater self. They now transfer that responsibility to the church rather than going through that process themselves. And so here's an image that kind of paints that picture. And in a sense, it's just conformity in a different way. You may be growing spiritually, you may be growing mentally, but you're not doing it at the highest level because you're relying and pushing the responsibility on somebody else. It's the same idea as eventually, if you are going towards that goal where it's Arnold in the end, there's going to be a point where you have to rip him off the wall and say, I am the guy.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I was thinking that as well because in the Bible it says that, right? It says that you shouldn't follow false images. So it's like, they place that image there, but at some point you're gonna have to fight that image because you're not that image.
Yes. It's an outline.
Yeah.
It is not you.
Exactly. It's like I don't want to be Jesus.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
you should go on the path that Jesus went down, and that's the important thing to make.
Truly.
But yeah, that's what happens in a church is they'll say, here are the things you can do, and then somebody puts themselves in the box, and then they have to become the group or the dogma. It's the same thing of going into an MMA gym, and they say, we do traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here. And so somebody gets attached to the belt system, and they're like, oh, I can't do that move because that's a brown belt move. And then they box themselves in because maybe they're only a blue belt. But really, if you start to do it correctly, Bruce Lee said, no way is the way. And I'm gonna let Teague touch on more of the MMA style stuff. But the dangerous state of affairs from this, the fact is that large numbers of individuals do not have living, functioning, superpersonal categories by which they can understand life experience, supplied either by the church or otherwise. So the truth is, today, even for the people that do have the church, a lot of people don't even have the church. A lot of people don't have a myth that tells them what's coming next through the psychic cycle. They don't have anything that's showing them how to be an individual. And so they have to search for these things outside of themselves, and they do it through entertainment, through movies.
Now you see,
Fight Club's a great example, but that's the reason why it's so good.
now you see Grey's Anatomy, and everybody's fucking everybody. Every nurse, every doctor's fucking everybody. So you go to a new workplace and you're like, hey, here we are. This is what we're supposed to do. No, I don't like it. You did it. I don't like you. Hey, you. And you go through the fucking habit, because if you didn't have a myth, you didn't have a story, you didn't have an outline to follow, you follow what you saw. And now again, who is the storyteller directing the movies? Who's the storyteller directing the TV shows? That's the scary thought.
What happens when when the movie doesn't go as planned? You know what I mean? Or like this story that you put in yourself doesn't go as planned. So you go into this office and you want to like F everyone, you know what I mean? And it's not the way you think it is, you know what I mean? Then that hits you another way, that hits you internally.
So you're like, what's real?
That's depression. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, in a way, you know, it's like, well, this ain't really the way I thought it was
I
supposed to
thought
be.
the real world was Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, right.
But no, it's that same idea. It's like somebody builds up this myth and this idea in their head. If it doesn't match reality, then they get kicked out of that same paradise. Right?
And it sounds cliche because it's like they're not thinking like Grey's Anatomy is the world in a way.
Right.
It is in their unconscious.
Yes.
Subconscious.
Yeah, think about all the movies you've seen, and then that's what starts to establish, and all this entertainment that we've been involved with from our age of 0 up till now. It's like we've built up so many ideas. And once again, Fight Club. I keep bringing that one up, but he talks about in that movie, he's like, we've all been raised to think that one day we're going to be superheroes and movie stars, and he's like, but we're slowly learning that fact that we are not. So it's like, and we're very pissed off.
Yes.
And so that movie's so beautiful because it starts to break somebody out of this these ideas of all these societal standards that have been pushed upon us, where it's like consumerism, you have to get the next clothing, you have to get the next car, you have to get all these things because that's what your value's based off of. When in reality, none of that shit matters. It's what is your internal world like? Once again, who are you once you separate yourself from all those things, and that's who you truly are.
What's crazy is that there's so many things in front of us that like teach us in our everyday life. You know what I mean? Like I believe that in this book that I'm reading, it talks about how every movie like uses the ritual process that the world lacks. You know what I mean? Which is like that boyhood to manhood process, right? Like how to teach a boy into manhood. Like the actual process of that is a lot of movies in the way like their theme is and the chronological order and everything is based off of a boy going through his trials into manhood. You know what I mean? Metaphorically, it might not always be a boy, it might be a girl. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But it's like that's something that we lack. You know what I mean? But yet we see it in stories all the time. But it's like we don't have that in ourselves. You know what I mean? So
it's like it's so beautiful because there's a reason you connect with certain movies, right? Like I always love the Dark Knight trilogy myself, but he goes through all these different battles, and in every movie he's going through a different villain that's kind of symbolize these things that he's going through. In the first one, the whole movie is focused on fear, so he has to conquer his fear not only for himself, but he's going to use fear against the people that he's fighting against. And so the villain that he goes against is both Scarecrow as well as Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul teaches him how to conquer fear, and then the other one uses fear against his people. And then in the second one, he's facing his shadow side. It's the complete opposite of who Batman is, right? He symbolizes chaos, somebody who doesn't live the world by order. And he tries to show everybody how chaotic the world actually is and break people's order down so that they actually start to see that once it gets to the point where society breaks down, people won't have that order. If the police aren't here, what are you going to do? If the police and the firemen aren't here, all the electricity goes out, who are you then? And so that's what you have to realize at the end of the day. The only reason that people are so civilized is because we're in a civilized society. But once those civil standards break down, if electricity went out, I guarantee you people would be killing each other in the streets. They're not going to give a shit because they know that water is going to make sure that their family's going to be able to survive.
You saw COVID, bro, no toilet paper, bro, no one cared about it.
No,
Truly, that paints a beautiful picture, and that's a meme, right? And that's what's so cool about meme culture is because memes are these myths that we live by nowadays, and they aren't created by, a lot of these big companies. They're painted by the people who actually live in society, and so that's why so many memes connect.
And like he's saying about creating that order, that outline of who people think they are based on the societal standards, you are literally going to see people become fucking animals. Animals. When their family doesn't have food, put yourself in their position. What would you do to get your family food? Anything. You got to kill, you got to steal, you got to rob. You'll make it happen. You'll die about it. Watch that shit happen. In Texas, go look at the stores right now. There ain't a fucking Snickers bar on the shelves. There ain't shit because it's fend for yourself. And the world has always been survival of the fittest. But depending on the outline, the order that people decide to create creates a civilized society. But like you're saying, as soon as that's stripped away, who are you now? That's a scary picture that most people will never even visualize. Hey, I would never kill anybody. And then Denby asks them, what if they came up and killed your mom? It's like, okay, well then I would get them. It's like, exactly, everybody's a murderer. Everybody has the capability for the evil. Everybody has the capability for the animalistic and primal. But You want to live in the fucking imaginary land instead of marrying the two.
Yeah, so this is a point that one can get to. I wanted to kind of paint this picture because I think it is important. So you see a rainbow off in the distance, and religions and things like that can paint this beautiful rainbow for you. But the same way that these groups can start to get people to conform, they paint this beautiful picture, this utopia, if you will. A lot of this has happened with communism and socialism in the past. But they paint this beautiful picture of when everybody's equal, that's when we have made it. So the same thing that people start to do internally when they create these images of something that's off in the distance, they start to do that with these collective movements, where it'd just be great if society split, you know, everybody's income and we all just made the same thing, and then we own the industry. But who actually owns the people when that starts to happen? And so they paint this beautiful picture of things that are off in the distance, and these politicians will say, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna give you $2,000. We're going to give you all these things and these handouts. And so they basically vote for these individuals based off these ideas, but they don't watch what they do. They only watch what they say. And then that leads to death long term. Communism has been the result of millions of deaths throughout the 20th century, and very few historians even focus on it. It's not even talked about in universities. It's not even talked about at school. We talk about the result of World War II, but we don't talk about what led us to World War II. We don't talk about why it happened. We just say, oh, it's Nazis. So painting a beautiful picture. That's what happens.
And when people don't know what they are or who they are, it's easy to accept the first solution provided to us as true instead of questioning, analyzing, and comparing to discover the truth. So as I'm going through, I'm the caterpillar, I'm eating, everything's great. Something bad fucking happens. I realize the world isn't what I see around myself. And then all of a sudden, a missionary of any faith comes and knocks at your door. Hey, this is the truth. You are craving something to be true. So they tell you in the first thing, oh, that has a principle of truth in it. That's got to be it. Anything to get me out of this uncomfortability. Watch these guys as soon as they, if the people in Texas right now, the people in the world, if people are in fear, despair, alienation, it's easy to follow a person or solution who says they can help us because you're so uncomfortable with where you're at, you're willing to give up rights, beliefs, and anything requested just to move into what we think will be a better place. Hey, there's a fucking sickness going around, be terrified. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. People are to the point where they're so fucking sick of like the craziness going on. Like, fuck, dude, line me up for the vaccine. I'm just ready for it to go back to normal. Can I just have things go back to normal, please? Somebody says they're gonna lead us back into normal. We're gonna go there. It's like, you fucking lost.
Just like they said 2 weeks, huh?
Hey, this is only 2. And first rule of sales, know what you can ask and give yes to. If they would have said, fucking, hey, we're gonna lock you down for a year and a half, how many people would have been like, oh, yeah, let's do it? Fucking nobody. But know what you can ask and get a yes to. Hey, just 14 days, we're gonna flatten the curve. Hey, just 1 mask. Now it's 30 fucking masks. Now it's a get your test. Now, oh, that test isn't good enough. Now get an anal swab test. It's like, this shit is a real life. But if these guys are in fear, if they're uncomfortable, if they don't like where they're at, they will literally do anything. Please just get me out of this uncomfortable position. Even if that leader has a bad agenda in the long term. So that leader may be, hey, I'm the guy. I'm going to get you out of this uncomfortability. I'm going to help you out. And then as soon as they get the swing, the pull, and the motivation of the people, it's like, oh, just kidding. Hey, the Jews in World War II, they said, hey, just come on the train. You know, we're all going to be good. Hey, I know you guys haven't showered in days and weeks. Come get a shower. Who wants to shower? And the people who went and got a shower never fucking came back. But they were so uncomfortable with where they were at that anything to get me out of where I'm at. And that's a scary place to be. Fucking terrifying place to be. So bring discernment to the table. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to go through the nature's process of uncomfort because I'm going to grow stronger. But if I'm looking to where's the easy way out instead of wishing I was better and stronger, I'm going to go with the easy route. And we're going to get fucking taken advantage of like that. It's fast. We won't even notice it. Look, I'm just ready for this to be over. If I have to get a vaccine, I'll get a vaccine. Fuck that. It's some horse shit. I get hyped up on. Greater good.
Jesus love.
Oh,
Yeah.
The greater good. So the devil, evil comes to us always disguised as good. Here's that leader. Hey, I'm the guy. I can help you get out of your hole. I can help you out. A loan shark. Oh, you're struggling with money? Hey, I got you. Here's some money. I got your back. Here it is. He's fuck, fine. I got the money. You go pay out your bill. 2 days later, he's at your door. Where's it at? And as soon as you don't know where it's at, and he starts knocking at the door, bad stuff's going to start happening if you decide not to take advantage or not to get him back on their terms, because now they control. Now they decide the direction because you took the easy way out. Instead of saying, well, how do I earn my own money? I'm going to take this handout real quick. Now they got you. Next thing you know, they come to the door looking back this time. Hey, you better have my money in 48 hours. I'll be back. They come back in 48 hours. You still don't have the money. They put a gun to your head and say, hey, give me my money. I don't have it. Now you're under their power. He's always coming, and he's always disguised as good. Celebrities. Hey, I'll give you the fame. I'll give you the money. I'll give you this. Also, then they sell their soul a little bit at a time. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. So look at this. This is when Jesus was fasting here. And look, Jesus is pointing to the Father. He says, I do what I see the Father do. And the devil's sitting here. He's pointing to the material. He's pointing to the ground here. And he's saying, hey, I'll give you everything you guys would like. I'll give you everything. This whole world will be yours. This whole material world will be yours. Every celebrity, hey, you'll have the fame. You'll have a #1 hit song. You'll have a #1 hit movie. A bestseller list from the author books, whatever it may be. I'll give it to you all. Do you want to take that? And all of a sudden they're like, well, I gave you this. I had your back, and now you owe me. Go listen to a song called Damien by DMX. It's about the devil giving him all the glory. And then now the devil starts saying, hey, I need you to kill somebody for me. I said, well, what the fuck? He's like, but you had my back. You gave me everything I wanted. I guess I'll do it. And then he does it. Then he goes and he hides for a month. He's like, I don't want to do it. I'm good. I'm chilling. Then Damien asks him again, hey, there's another person plotting on us. We got to take him out. He's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, who had your back this whole time? I gave you everything. He's like, well, you're right. You're my fucking dog. You did give it to me. That's the contract of selling your soul. And it's not a written contract. It's a moral contract. And now he has that loyalty to him. And guess who, in that song, guess who the next person he asked him to kill? It's his own dog. He's like, oh, fuck, that's my dog. I don't want. He's like, well, who's your biggest fan? It's like Slim Shady's the alter ego, you know, talking to him all the time. But heavenly things, the heavenly kingdom above the earthly kingdom. And at the end of the song, he's like, man, in the third part, he's like, man, I could have got all of this through God. And then the devil's like, but you would have had to win. There's the instant gratification above the delayed gratification. Instant get out of comfort instead of I'm going to grow through the discomfort and conquer. Jesus was offered the whole world. Should he break into temptation? But he chose to do what the big G told him to do. He wanted the kingdom of heaven, not the material kingdom. He wanted the peace. Peace of mind is the real fucking money. Most people in the world don't have peace of mind, whether because they're lacking in fear or because of their actions. But peace of mind is the true money. That's the kingdom of heaven right there. And he says, Satan, get behind me. And he said, but now this is just us here. Because we're a two-part creature. We're animal and we're spiritual. We got to understand that we got to recognize our evil, as we talked about earlier. I've never killed somebody. But that's a fucking lie. In any circumstance, if it got too extreme, you were pushed to your limits, you'd be a killer. Or the Nazis, hey, I'm just doing my job. The doctors, hey, there's no side effects to that vaccine. They told me I'm just doing my job. And so we have to be able to recognize that evil in order to be the best that we can be, not only to protect ourselves, but to protect the people around us who are going through that in the material world, and marry the two, the animal and the spirit, the director and the actor. Now you can become both to attain your wholeness. When two become one. Martial arts, you guys will fucking love this. So the Shaolin monks, and most people when they're getting into martial arts at the beginning, like, man, I can fucking hit hard. I can move. I can start hitting. I can really cause damage to somebody. That's the beginning of it. And then later through the process, they go through, let's say it's the regular belt system. They eventually get to the point where it's spiritual. Well, if I really know how to fight, I only want to fight when I need to. they start tapping into the dragon. So the tiger was symbolized as our physical. The dragon was our spiritual. We have again the Jesus and the devil, the material and the spiritual. And we have to be able to marry the two because we're a two-part creature. The Shaolins, as soon as they were about to conquer their last test, they had to go through a hallway. There's moving arms, there's little booby traps, they had to fear, pop, pop, pop. And they finally make it to the end of the hallway. They pass all the obstacles. At the very end, their last task, they had to lift up this with their forearms. They had to lift up this burning pot, and it would brand them with a tiger and a dragon here because they're marrying the two. I'm a physical warrior. I'm a capable beast, but I'm also a spiritual and a peace dragon. That makes sense? So being able to marry the spirit with the physical is where the power comes from. And knowing, like he said, no way is the way. Just like any other thing, Floyd Mayweather would say, I wanted to be a killer like Mike Tyson. I wanted to be the greatest like Muhammad Ali. I wanted to be fast like Sugar Ray. He's like, I put them all in a box, shook them up, and Floyd Mayweather came out. It's being able to take the gold from every system, from every learning, from every idea, take the gold and discard the fucking garbage. Melt the fake shit off so you only have the purity.
Yeah, and to that point too, I was going to add in, the
We're almost
gold
there, guys.
really comes when you start to have that individuality that gets put in with it, right? And Bruce Lee, I think it was you that actually sent it over the other day, but Bruce Lee would go into several different systems, learn the foundation of it, and then build off of the foundation that each one of them had. And you can do the same thing with all these myths, right? It's like there's certain ideas that are identical in each part of different myths that are applicable to your psyche. And really where the gold starts to come is when you build your individuality off of those foundations, because there's certain truths throughout all of them, and then you find yourself through applying them. Yeah, and so results of conformity, we'll start diving into this. When the transpersonal and conscious archetypes have no adequate containers, such as an established religious structure, they have to go somewhere else because the archetypes that live in the unconscious are facts of psychic life. Basically, man needs meaning and myth to function off of. One possibility is that they will be projected into worldly matters and intertwine with the reality outside. So rather than having a religious structure or something along those lines to start to filter in all these ideas that they have, now they're actually getting to get paired along with these social justice movements or just some type of movement in general. They get religious attitudes towards them. And when you get religious attitudes towards them, that's when some really bad things can happen, because the transpersonal value, that same idea, the same part of somebody's mind and brain that they would usually associate with religion, then becomes how high one's standard of living is, or personal power, or some social reform movement, or any one of the number of political activities. This happens in Nazism, which is radical right, and then communism, which is radical left. So that same religious attitude that somebody would have now gets associated with a movement, and now they get that basically, if God wills it, right? And then it's like, if God wills murdering millions of people, like it happened in communism, it's like, so be it. That's what happens. And so somebody starts to really give into these political movements, and then that's really what starts to take them away from their own individuality. You go ahead. But yeah, so the same dynamism can be projected into the race problem, either as racism or anti-racism. Interesting seeing all that. But personal, secular, or political actions become charged with unconscious religious meanings. So same point like I'm making, the same part of the brain that is usually attached to religious meaning starts to become towards the state. And this is a perfect example of it in this picture. Everybody starts to give the hand that will rule the world, right? One big union. And so everybody starts to conform to these ideas, and then that becomes their religious and their meaning, because they have no individual meaning outside of that group thought. And this leads to very dangerous things, particularly dangerous because whenever a religious motivation is acting unconsciously, it causes fanaticism with all its destructive consequences. And so this leads into
an example here is the Spanish conquistadors. They came over, and this happened in the Library of Alexandria, but basically the Christian Crusades. Hey, we're Christians. You better believe what we believe. And then they're coming in and fucking pillaging, raping, burning down all kinds of stuff. The Spanish conquistadors came to The Mayans came to Mexico, came to Guatemala, came to Honduras, all those areas, and they said, basically, all your works, all your books, they had all these gold, they had all these different ways of thinking. And if you guys study, these guys were some of the most intelligent beings in recorded history, along with the Egyptians that we can find in history right now. That we can find in history. We know there's more. Now, they said, well, this is the view of the devil because it's different. Oh, you got a different religion than me? You're of the devil. Oh, you think different? Mama said, Mama said. So all of a sudden they came down and they said, we're going to start burning your fucking books. Next thing you know, they don't even know what the Mayans really were about because all the history's gone. You've seen this in multiple different religions too, multiple different religions. They come in for their own godly ventures and they are burning books, burning history, burning knowledge, because the storyteller has the power. Whoever can write the story dictates the group thing, dictates that big where everybody's in their arms, and that's who they become. Instead of being able to have multiple different stories to be able to analyze and say which one is true, or do they all have truth?
Yeah. So point being, you can really fall into to fanaticism between whatever group it may be. You have Hitler, who's on the radical right. You have Stalin, who actually killed more people than Hitler, but you don't really hear about that because they don't teach in history all the things that happened with the Soviet Union, especially around Stalin times. And so more people died in concentration camps. There are gulags. I don't know if you ever heard that word, but either way, the state now becomes the people's religion. And if you're against it, you're an enemy of the state and you die. And so that's why Christians got persecuted to the max, because their world was not of this world, right? And so they had to kill them because they were more true to somebody else's world rather than the state's world. And the same thing will happen if people start to go down those tracks of communism.
Oh, you're one of those guys that don't wear masks, huh? Put a fucking mask on, you're killing grandma. You know what I'm saying? Now you're gonna start going, oh, you don't want a vaccine? Now you become an enemy to the state. Watch how this is slowly shifting into picking people apart and causing more and more division. It's absolutely fucking nuts. But most people aren't worried. They're in so much fear of the vaccine, so much fear of this virus that they can't even see all the outer workings.
It's like spiritual Jim Crow laws in a way. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like putting people in these like segregated states of like, oh, you're not gonna wear a mask? I don't want to drink out that same water fountain as you. I don't want to use the same bathroom as you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's a whole different way of thinking. Another thing too that I noticed here is that in historical images, there's always the right hand of God and then the left hand down, right? So in a way, something I've noticed here, because I've seen these images before, it's like they're almost using the right hand, the power of God, and using it towards humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a way.
Controlling the
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like it's using the right hand as a symbolic way of like, I'm using the power that I obtained from up here. Because like to say Hitler wasn't smart, you know what I mean, is like an understatement.
It's naive.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So it's like he's using that smart, that power, that guidance, that wisdom that he has for fucking evil, for his internal needs, you know?
Yeah, you got the top mountain of Satan and said yes.
Exactly. You know, so it's like it's crazy that they're both using the right hand for that. You know?
Just watch, man. The more symbology, the more historical figures, the more you study, it's more and more prominent. And that's why all this stuff says symbolism will be their downfall. Manly P. Hall, he says, when humans understand and can begin to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will be lifted from the eyes of humanity.
Yeah. So there's some facts to point out. Nazi Germany was pretty much responsible for World War II. So as a result of all that, not meaning that it was directly them that caused all these, but they did start everything. So it's a result of the world. An estimated total of 70 to 85 million people perished. We're about 3% of the 1940 world population. So even if you get a small group to really pull into these ideas and start to get them to associate their psyche and start to associate their religious meaning and purpose with the state, these are the things that it can result in. And so Soviet Union, once again, these things aren't really taught in schools. We didn't really get taught about Soviet Union throughout all like education. And there's a reason. It's because they don't, I mean, the same people that want you to start to block that idea out in your head want it for the future, right? In total, no fewer than 20 million Soviet citizens. So this is just citizens. This could be women and children and just men who weren't even at war, were put to death by the regime or died as a direct result of its repressive policies. This does not include the millions who died in the wars, epidemics, and famines that were predictable consequences of the Bolshevik policies, if not directly caused by them. So the main point being is when you get people to fanaticize about these type of beliefs and these ideas, they lead to death. And then the people who do not buy into it are the 20 million Soviet citizens, because now they oppose this religious meaning and purpose. Now they have to die. And so to dive into the summary is really what makes it so that we don't have to go down these paths. The main thing is becoming an individual, increasing consciousness. With greater consciousness, individuals can heal the splits in their mind between what's conscious and unconscious, bringing them to wholeness in their psyche. And so really this path is you getting to get more aware of evil. How does it happen in the world? And what is it that starts to take place in everybody's mind that gets them into these group thought ideas, and then start to get everybody to move along with the collective. If you can start to break out of the collective, you can actually start to control your own destiny a little bit more. And so part of it is confronting the evil. If one is to become evil, it must see how it is masked, or if one is to avoid evil, I think I meant to put, but in the collective as well as the internal world. So you have to be able to be aware of how does evil happen in society, and how does evil happen internally. And then really the process to doing that is gaining humility internally. One must be true to himself inside if he is to be of value on the outside. So we have to get truthful internally so we can actually start to see the emotions that we have, the ideas that we have, and where did all these beliefs come from.
And then questions to consider, just to wrap her up here. Life is a cycle, just like the butterfly cycle. And the only constant is change. Everybody's fucking terrified of change. It's the most interesting thing because that's the literal only thing that continues happening over and over and over and over. But everybody's so scared of it. Well, I like where I'm at. I'm never sure the change. Why are so many people afraid of change? Because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to go to the gym if they've been sitting on the couch for 10 years because it's uncomfortable. But the more you consistently adapt to it and go, the stronger it gets and the easier change is. If I take too long away from sparring, I don't want to spar. I get nervous. Fuck, am I gonna step back? But if I'm consistently in that stress, it's like I live for it. I live for the uncomfortability. I live for the change. I change anything, I'll fucking rise above it because we're consistently growing through that. Where do we lack more currently in our life? Do we lack in the tiger side or the dragon side? Are we lacking more in the physical side or are we lacking more on the spiritual side? Everybody, depending on where they're at in their life, are going to have a different portion. So these are just questions to consider before next week's talk. And then chaos and order. Do we lack more in chaos or do we lack more in order? It has to be done by the book? Or are we, hey, we're just flowing, let's let it go, fuck it, whatever happens, happens. You have to marry the two in order to get somewhere. Does that make sense? Where do we lack more? Do we lack more in the chaos or do we lack more in the order? Do we lack more in the logical or do we lack more in the emotional? It's like, well, I hurt somebody's feelings. It's like, well, fuck it, your feelings are hurt. It's a logical thing because I said what I said and it was right. But it's like, there's also the emotional side. It's like, could I have delivered it differently to allow this person to still get the logical answer, but not fucking rip their heart out during the process? So everybody's on a different scale of this, but just take into some internal reflection. And then does our religious beliefs or perspectives make us judge others' different opinions? Or do we love everyone as God loves us? Do we have the same attitude towards the self, the big G God, as we would want the self to have towards us? Do we love others as much as we want to be loved? It's like, oh man, fuck, this person put mismatching socks on, so fuck them because they're different. Now I'm gonna start judging. Well, they don't have their fucking life in order. I got my life in order. I got matching socks today. It's the littlest type of shit where judgment, or hey, you grew up, you were Christian and you were Muslim, or you were just something different. You were atheist. You were this. You were that. Now we cause more separation instead of, hey, this is a fucking human being. Even if I disagree, I can agree to disagree and love this person for the good instead of hate them for the different. And that's all we got today, ladies and gentlemen. Bryson, we're going to end it on that one. Thank you so much, boss. And we'll see.
Thank you guys. I'm excited for next week. I'll be there physically this time. It's my bad because I set my alarm for 7 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. because I was super tired last night. So my apologies, and I'll be there in person next time. It's good to see you guys.
Joining, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much and have a blessed day.
You too, guys. Bye.